Hello, everyone. Grüß Gott. Alan Nichols here with Last on the Bandwagon. If you want to learn more about guitar players, handmade guitars, Mother's Day gifts, do's and don'ts, writing music, breaking the law while bleeding profusely, 9/11, and ultimately Jesus, then watch this video. And you might just learn something from it. I know you will. Hey guys, this is Alan Nichols with Last on the Bandwagon. Here I am again. If you made it through the first video, congratulations. This one's probably going to get much worse. So I have a guest today with me. His name is Greg Reiter. He's right there. Let's see if I can do it. There he is, right there. And Greg is probably one of the most incredible guitar players I've ever known in my life. He's inspiring, to say the least, on many different levels. As far as a guitar player goes, he's probably one of the few people that I've ever known that's built guitars that he's played live, and not from pieces and parts that you can buy out of the store. He's actually gone in the woods, found a tree, we took it to the mill, had it milled. He's built amazing guitars, like stuff you haven't seen before, and he played them. So not only that, he's an accomplished musician. He's on many different levels, and we're going to talk to him a little bit about that. And he's got a very interesting life. A lot of tragedy, a lot of triumph. He's a very inspirational person. So, dude, I want to thank you for spending the time and doing this with me. I wanted to bring up this story that I was in Iceland eating in a Hard Rock Cafe, and I happened to look down at the table, and I see this book, this advertisement for this book, the Hard Rock Cafe book on the table tent. And I look down, and out of the corner of my eye, I see a guitar that was built by you in that book. And it was the Lollipop guitar that we gave to Jane's Addiction on the Lollapalooza tour. It was like a couple shows before they called it quits as a band. And Perry played that guitar, I think, the next night on stage, or the night after that on the next show. And you guys went down there. I didn't go to that one because I didn't feel like going down there. But that was incredible. That was a good night. That was an incredible night. Beautiful. It was out in Virginia. And I remember when Dave Navarro was looking at the guitar, he's like, "So what did you do, man? Did you cut the headstock off right here?" And you were like, "No, man. I built this thing."
He was zoned out. Yeah. He said that there used to be frets here, and he was referring to the part where the tuning pegs were.
Right. Yeah. No, you're like, "No, man, I built this guitar from scratch. It's one piece of wood." So that was a cool experience. And then you got a couple of other inquiries from other name brands at the time. I think Soundgarden, and we tried to do
I
them in London,
Well, when we were in England, flew over there to do a concert that got canceled, and we ended up playing at the Soundgarden.
Yeah,
right?
We played at Soundgarden, and we played somewhere else. I don't know, but I remember we went to talk to the guy from Soundgarden or Rock Garden, and he was like, "Yes." So we put the tape in. We played it for like 30 seconds. Like, "All right, you're booked. You got it." And then we came back and played, and people people enjoyed it. People in England liked our music. So Greg and I have known each other for a really long time. We played in a band in the early 90s. We kind of met while I was on the road with another band, and we met at my manager, your bass player at the time. We met at his place. I think you said something, you saw me sleeping on his floor and said something like, he looks so comfortable laying there sleeping. I want to be in a band with that dude because he looks like this is what he was made for, or something like that. I don't remember what it was exactly, but it was some sort of statement like that, and I thought that was pretty cool coming from a guy like you.
Yep. Yeah, early 90s.
Yeah, so that was actually before the early 90s. That was in the late 80s when we met, I think.
No, it was 90 or 91.
When we met.
Right.
You mean when I was on the road with my band?
When we met at Ned's house.
Okay. All right. So don't trust me as far as memory goes because it's gone. Every bit of it. Today is Mother's Day, and I gave Jennifer a Mother's Day gift this morning, even though she's not my mom. She's a good mom. She's a cool chick. And I treated her with a carton of Clorox wipes that I found at Target this morning. They were on the shelves, and I was like, you know what? I have to purchase one. And you can only get one at Target, because if you try to buy two, man, the Gestapo comes in and just like swoops in and they embarrass you. And
that reminds me of like finding the last Tickle Me Elmo doll.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yep. This is no Tickle Me Elmo. This is legit Clorox wipes. So what more can a mother ask for on Mother's Day?
I blew it myself. I got reminded it was Mother's Day. Oops.
Yeah. I'm there with you, man. It's, I just happened to have those neurons snapping this morning when I went out. So I don't deserve any credit for that. So yeah, Greg, the reason why I asked you to be on this is because, you're an interesting dude. You've been through a lot in your life. Before I met you, you were an accomplished guitarist. You were signed. You were touring. You were doing a lot of stuff before we even met. And how did you get involved in that, and how did you get started with it?
Wow. Well, back in the mid to early 70s, I started playing guitar. Took an interest when I was 4. My uncle had this huge amplifier, big Fender Showman that just towered over me, and he played it, and it was loud, and I just knew that's what I wanted to do.
That's awesome.
I was just so impressed.
Yeah.
And then from there, I took an interest in learning metal rock guitar and also flamenco guitar at the same time, even though the flamenco took a backseat. It was just too out there, and I didn't understand it. But it always had lurking. A backseat. Yeah, but it was a real challenge. To me, the phrases those guitarists were playing was just completely out of this world. And it was such a challenge, and it took me years and years to understand it. But in the end, I did. But so I wore out my Carlos Montoya albums alongside of my Black Sabbath and Led Zeppelin and UFO albums, learning the licks. And then eventually, things evolved. I started playing with the guys that in a band that eventually evolved into Cinderella. I quit right about a year before they got their big break. I was tired of starving. So I hitchhiked home, and that was the end of that. And
yeah,
anyway.
You know what, kids? There's a lot of starving that goes on in what we've done. There's a lot of starving. I mean, I guess not for everybody, but it seems like everybody I know, with the exception of a couple people, there was starving involved. Go ahead.
Yeah, so right after that, I joined a cover band because they were making money, and the people that wanted to play originals were not. And so I did that for a year or two, and then I took a break and really started getting into building guitars, which that was the late 80s. And that was right around the time when I built the guitars that I played in the band that we were in together. Mm-hmm. And so after that, I moved to D.C., and shortly after that, you and I met.
Yeah, you know, there is one of our albums that's on iTunes right now. It's Dysfunction. It's called Remains of the Day. That recording's on there for people to go check out. If you want to go check it out, I'll probably put a link or a video or a picture of that in here in the description, or in this window. And you know, when you go through all of this stuff and you go through the things that you went through, the learning, the tearing down, the building, do you think it's been worth it for you? I mean, up to this point, do you think all of this has been worth your time, worth your effort?
Yeah, but not in a monetary sense.
Well, yeah, of course. I don't mean that. I mean, has it been worth it? Do you feel like if you were to die tomorrow, you could sit there and go, yeah, man, I did some things that I wanted to do? Or do you feel like, well, I wasted time doing this, or I didn't spend enough time doing that?
I think our lives, they're framed out for us, and we make a few decisions and they change the path, and some good decisions, some bad. But in the end, I think we're all just supposed to learn from these mistakes and triumphs. So to answer your question, yes, because eventually, when I got saved, I started finding a deep connection with my music composing and God, and that was the biggest joy and discovery, or self-discovery and realization for me, that I just felt the connection at that point. And I think that the music part of my life, it was just always meant to be, no matter what path I would have taken. Even for an example, 1980, I had taken a test exam for, I think it was called Maxwell Institute in Philadelphia, for computer programming, and I passed, and with flying colors in the logic department. Go figure. And I never told my parents that they threatened me. They did not like, threatened me,
of course.
but they said, they took me aside and they said, well, you scored well, and we think you'd do well here, but we have a guaranteed 100% job guarantee, but you're going to have to cut your hair. And it's like, cut my hair? He said, yeah, well, you can't look like that and have a computer programming job. So I never said anything. And then I think about a year or two ago, I told my mother about this. And she was livid. She says, "Why didn't you tell me? I would have sued them for discrimination."
So the reaction wasn't what you thought it was going to be. The reaction was actually support.
Yeah. So my life would have been, I would have had much more money in my pocket, and I probably could have supported my musical endeavors more effectively if I would have just fessed up.
What an idiot.
It's decisions like that, you make the decisions, and many years later, you see what could have been and wasn't.
Right.
So anyway, I think in either case, I would have ended up doing music. It just might have been a little easier if I would have been a computer programmer.
I would concur to that, because you have a lot of talent. Your mind kind of works in a certain way, especially when you write. I feel like you and I have this incredible writing chemistry that you were the first person that I wrote with that actually made me feel like anything that I suggested to you or brought to you, or I would just hum something to you and you would listen to it and you'd be like, yeah. And then you would take that and then you would mold it and manipulate it and morph it into something else. And that kind of showed me how the real world and the real process works, because not everybody's a genius. Not everybody's a virtuoso. Not everybody plays at the skill level that you play at. And when I look at other musicians that write, that I'm talking about people that are on the top people, when you look at their process and you look at how they write and you look at the way that they formulate their art, it's not what you think. It's very simple. It's very almost primitive. And what they're doing is they're using the tools that they have to articulate what they kind of hear in their mind, or what they are going to hear, or what they could hear if they just pushed it a little bit further. And that was the thing when I realized that, and you helped me realize that, that legitimizes you. If you're an artist, then not everybody creates art the same way. There isn't a specific way that you can write. There's not a specific way that you can paint or draw. It's your way. And when I started looking at these different artists, when I looked at, I look at certain guitar players, they play in certain key so that when they sing, if their voice isn't that great, I don't have a big range. And some of my favorite people don't have a big range either, but they're millionaires with number one hits on the charts. And the way they did it was they figured out a way to play guitar in a key that fit their voice, that made their voice sound more dynamic than it really was. And it's not cheating. It's just creating with what you have. And that's the thing that you kind of brought out with me. And that's something I really appreciate that you did for me, because when I started working with you and we would start putting these songs together, you legitimized me as far as being an artist. It wasn't me trying to convince other people that that I can do something. It's you took me in and said, let's create something together. And that reminds me that the time that I flew down to Miami when you were living in the building that was condemned and it was going to be knocked down. We wrote a really cool song. It was a great song. We hadn't written anything together for many years. We came down there, we sat down, we recorded it. I wrote the lyrics to it, and it's actually a legitimate song. And actually, I'd like to try to explore finishing that song, or
we need to finish it,
recording it. And recording it, in a studio, or with what we have now, with the ability that we have now. And that song, I'm gonna find it, and I'm gonna put it on this video, a little sample of it, because it's a cool song. And we just sat on the beach and we did that. And that reminds me of, I told you I was gonna bring this up. You knew that there was a old organ or keyboard or something in this guy's apartment that that was in the same building that had already been shuttered up, locked, and considered like illegal to enter. If you try to enter it, you would be arrested. And you're like, I know there's this keyboard up there. And you talked me into going up a ladder into this apartment. We went in there and
with a skinny little rope.
Yes, with a little tiny rope, and we're lowering down a vintage
300-pound Rhodes piano.
It was a Rhodes piano, and that thing was heavy. And I had just sliced my hand open. It was sliced wide open from breaking a glass. And we go up there, and you were the guy in the back with the rope, and I was the guy in the front, and we're lowering it down, and it gets tangled around your leg, and it's literally cutting off the circulation in my hand, and this Rhodes piano is dangling out of the window while it's ripping my arm off, and you're struggling to get your feet untied from the rope, and I'm like, dude, you gotta help me. And you're like, I'm trying. And there's blood gushing out everywhere. And we go down we finally get it outside, and we get it up through your part. And I said, you know what? If they're going to be looking for somebody that went into that building, they're going to find us, because there's a blood trail that goes all the way around the building straight into your apartment from me.
I'll never forget that. I felt your pain deeply.
Yeah, I bet you felt my pain. Oh, I'm sure you did, man. I'm sure you did. You always got me in some sort of trouble. Anytime we were around each other. Good, clean fun, though, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, you know, we've been through a lot together. Our musical career has taken us around. I mean, we've done some stuff. We've traveled. We played at CBGB's. We played in front of a bunch of record execs up in New York and different places, and we were on our way to landing something. And then things kind of just petered out on our end, and specifically on mine. When I think back at some of those shows at CBGB's and places like that, it was a different world. People would get in a bus from DC and travel up there just to see us play. It would be a line out the building to get into CBGB's to see a show. And now the chances of something like that happen, besides the fact that CBGB's doesn't exist. Oh, and by the way, that reminds me of a story. I stepped in dog crap in CBGB's before a show, and I did a little bit of research. The dog that supposedly was doing that had to have been dead for 20 years. So either someone was bringing bags of dog crap and throwing it on the floor just for old time's sake, something, because I don't think it was I think it was the original dog that was crapping in there. Do you ever step in dog crap there?
I can't recall doing so. No,
it was just me. So I've got a little jewel and a little nugget that you'll never get. That's all mine.
You saved it?
No, I got it off my shoe, and there was probably remnants on it during our show. We were opening for somebody, I don't remember who. So I probably left a little bit for them. We've played some tricks on people too, haven't we? Baby powder on drum heads. Me vomiting in people's boots before their show. When I interviewed Eric, he was very kind and said that I had no extremes with any sort of substance or abuse of anything, and I thought that was very sweet of him. And I think that when it says a lot about my personality that besides the fact that I covered up a lot of the things that were going on with me. Even the people that were really close with me may not even have known how much I was partying without them being around. And that led to other things that they did see, because I was more of a selfish person when it came to things like that. Let's see. What do I want to go down to? Oh, yeah. So I wanted to talk to you about what I was listening to. Do you listen to vinyl at all?
I did, but I ended up moving around so much. Like I sold all my vinyl stuff on my turntable.
Hard to carry when you're traveling around. Well, I wanted to share something that I listened to this morning on my turntable, and I'm gonna get it here. It's an album by New Order, and it's called Get Ready. There it is. Like there. The interesting thing about this album is that I've been listening to it for years, and there's this one track on the album called "Turn My Way," and every time I'd hear it, I'm like, man, this just sounds like a Billy Corgan or Smashing Pumpkins ripoff. Like it just sounds just too much like something that he would write. Well, it turns out that's who's singing the intro to the song. It's Billy Corgan singing it, and I didn't realize that until recently. And then the other thing is that Bobby Gillespie sings on my other favorite track, which is the singer for Jesus and the Mary Chain, which is pretty cool. I think it's called Rock the Shack. So it's an interesting album. I love this album. I love vinyl. And I'm going to keep featuring some sort of record and maybe some sort of, some sort of trivia fact that when it comes to the albums here. I want to talk to you. I mean, I'm jumping all over the place, but that's the beauty of being able to do this digitally and being able to edit it and do whatever I want. But I wanted to talk to you about something that really changed your life, something that rocked you pretty hard. And you were in, a lot of people remember where they were on 9/11. And I was in D.C., and I remember the chaos that was on down there. I lived downtown D.C. when all that stuff went down. You were actually in one of the buildings that was hit in 9/11. So I wanted you to tell us a little bit about that, your experience about that.
And the further that you go, the darker it gets without you. And there's something you should know, like the things I've never said, and our castles made of gold have crumbled into the sea, and the skyline we used to own somehow doesn't look the same. Now I'm chasing you in a jet over Miami. Now I'm chasing you in a jet over Miami.